So, a little bit about me. I graduated from Fayetteville Technical Community College back in 2003. Seems like 100 years ago some of these days. I've been an active member of the NCPTA and been into the APTA since my first year as a student. I had a professor that was absolutely just completely passionate about our profession, really encouraged involvement, and it stuck with me since that day in my program. Because I felt like there was a way that I could make an impact, especially as I became involved and I saw issues that we as PTAs faced, which I'll be going into in some of my discussions. So as Tiffany said, I'm currently the APTA PTA caucus delegate, and I'll kind of explain a little bit more in the presentation about what that role is, and and Tiffany's talked to you a little bit about her role. So prior to becoming elected as a PTA caucus delegate for the APTA, I was the North Carolina representative for 3 or 4 years, I forget now. As part of APTA's programs for PTAs, they have what they call advanced proficiency, which is a 5-year study of what you have done for clinical education as well as volunteer service roles. So I went down the track for musculoskeletal and received advanced proficiency through APTA in the musculoskeletal category. I've previously been awarded the NCPTA Outstanding PTA Award. That's more so just because of what I've done to try and help promote PTAs within our state. And I practice in outpatient orthopedics and have for pretty much my entire career. I moved to Wilmington just over a year ago. Prior to that, I'd been in Fayetteville at a practice. So what I'm kind of going to talk about today, give a little bit of background as far as what PTAs are and where we are in the profession. I'm going to start with kind of just the basic description that APTA has on file as our statement of who we are as PTAs. So as PTAs, this is our technical description through APTA. We have the capability, ability, and responsibility to exercise professional judgment within their scope of practice under the supervision and plan of care of a physical therapist, and to professionally act on that judgment. A physical therapist assistant is formally educated, clinically trained, licensed, and ethically bound professional clinician that is responsible for the implementation and progression of physical therapy services as directed by the supervising physical therapist, and complies with all legal requirements of jurisdictions regulating the practice of physical therapy. So the PTA caucus actually got this approved through our National House of Delegates about 2 years ago, because we had a very brief description of what a PTA was. We didn't have anything in our description about the fact that we were formally educated, that we were clinically trained, or that we are licensed and ethically bound professional clinicians, which those are huge factors when you're looking to insurance companies for reimbursement for services, which we'll get into more of that. So this was a big thing that we got pushed through. APTA approved it through our house, and it's now our position statement that can be presented nationwide. So, and I know Tiffany, and I know she's already talked to you guys about a lot of these things, and these are just APTA's professional standards for PTAs. So physical therapist assistants shall respect the inherent dignity and rights of all individuals. That's patients, that's co-workers, that's families, that's everybody. Physical therapist assistants shall be trustworthy and compassionate in addressing the rights and needs of patients and clients. And again, that always extends further than just the patients and clients, because you know that's not the only people that you deal with. You've been out on your first clinical now. Physical therapist assistants shall make sound decisions in collaboration with the physical therapist and within the boundaries established by laws and regulations. Now, each state is going to have a little bit different practice act and what you can and can't do. If you go outside of North Carolina for practice, just make sure you look up whatever state's practice act you're in, because as you're being educated here and taking licensure board applies to everybody. It's the same test, but your state practice act that you're being taught for going out for clinical may vary. Physical therapist assistants shall demonstrate integrity in the relationships with patients, clients, families, colleagues, students, and other healthcare providers, employers, payers, and the public. You represent physical therapy, no matter where you are and what you do. It's not just at your job, because you know you're going to run across people outside of there. So always remember that. When they see you as their therapist. Physical therapist assistants shall fulfill their legal and ethical obligations. Goes back to the Practice Act. Physical therapist assistants shall enhance their competence through lifelong acquisition and refinement of knowledge, skills, and abilities. This right here is just the basics, y'all. You're only just beginning. And I have to say, it's been a great journey. Physical therapist assistants shall support organizational behaviors and business practices that benefit patients, clients, and society. Physical therapist assistants shall participate in efforts to meet the health needs of people locally, nationally, or globally. So now I'm going to start into the PTA membership, and I know Tiffany's already talked to you guys a lot about the association and importance of membership, and I'm going to kind of go into a lot of different topics, probably some she's touched on briefly. So PTAs and membership. Now I'm going to go into a little bit more detail as we go along through this. But PTAs have kind of shied away from the organization, and there are actually only 7% nationally of PTAs that are members, which is a very low number. Now, in contrast, there are significantly more PTs that are licensed practicing, and we don't even have 30% of PTs that are members. So membership across the board is not what it should be for an association, but we're really trying to focus through the efforts with APTA and with the state chapters of increasing PTA membership. Some of the benefits that you can get from the membership, you get a significant amount of collaboration. I mean, I met Tiffany 10 years ago through the stuff that we've done through the association, and I can't think of how many other people I've met through the years, but it really allows you to connect with others, to network. I mean, I've got people that I can contact in pretty much any state that if I need something, or if I have somebody that's moving there, I can call them up and say, who do you know in this area, and establish a connection, not just for me if I need something, but for my patients if they're transferring. So it's been great in that aspect. And studies prove that the more you interact with professionals, the better you become at treating patients. You can collaborate, you can call up and say, hey, have you seen somebody with this going on, or have you seen somebody with this? So it gives you a network outside of just your colleagues that you work with. There's a strong focus on improving the student and young professional experience. You're where it begins. If we can hook you guys now as students and get you to develop and get you to interact and become a big part of our association, we can continue to grow. I mean, I think back to, that's where I got hooked, was as a student. And I've been here for 14 years now as a part of it. And now I'm coming out and trying to draw in more. So we do a lot of advocacy for the profession. So we advocate for the profession and maintaining who we are and maintaining our profession and our rights to practice, because there are other disciplines that are trying to hone in on what we do and get credit and be able to bill for services that are therapy services. So we have to advocate at the national level to try and protect who we are as professionals. And we do that at the national level, and we do that at the chapter level. We have committees set up in both areas. They also collaborate together to help establish the needs. Like North Carolina right now has been in a lawsuit with the acupuncturists over services provided for dry needling. We have received support from several other chapters, but we've also received support from the APTA, the National Association, to help us with this lawsuit. Now, our first lawsuit directly with the Acupuncturist Board was ruled in our favor, but we still have a federal antitrust lawsuit that we're fighting, that they're anticipating a cost of over $300,000 by the time the lawsuit is done. Now, this is not coming out of any additional funds. Members aren't being asked for any additional funds. This is money that has been raised by being a part of membership, as well as other chapters supporting. Other chapters donating money, APTA donating money, because part of the money from membership dues goes into funds for lawsuits. Now, not just specifically this lawsuit, but if something else were to arise, the association has funds to support the profession. And that's what a lot of people don't see when they look at membership. A lot of people just say, oh, it's a journal and I pay my dues. But there's so much more to membership than just the physical what you get back. So there are some billing issues, and I don't know how much she's talked to you about services provided for PTAs, that some insurance companies don't reimburse for PTA services. Now, North Carolina is not a state that we have a whole lot of issue there, but there are several states that do have an issue. There are also insurance companies that only reimburse 50% for what a PTA provides versus what a PT provides. And we'll get into more of that discussion a little bit later as well. So these are things that, without the support of APTA, without the work and advocacy, this can significantly affect the future for us as PTAs going into a career. Because if they aren't going to get reimbursed for services we provide, why hire a PTA? So this has been one of my big fights, and this is actually how I got involved. And Tiffany was there the night, and it actually kind of pushed me to get up and speak my mind, and it all kind of started there. So something else the APTA does for us is they promote physical therapy nationally, not just to patients, but they promote us to everybody. So you guys all know October is National Physical Therapy Month. We also have National Day of Service Day that PTs function. It's a day in October. I want to say it's the 15th of October, but it's a go out and do some kind of community service and promote physical therapy while you're there. It's a volunteer day. We have what we call the Move Forward campaign with APTA, and it's about what physical therapy provides, about moving forward, progressing yourself. We also just this year have started, they have several billboards in major cities about the Move Forward campaign, but they also started a major campaign this year called Choose PT, and it's in effort to work to combat the opioid abuse. So this summer we passed a motion at our House of Delegates for the work for the opioid campaign. We did a national press release, and that day that we approved it, we had a billboard up in Times Square, big Move Forward Choose PT campaign. And with the hashtag Choose PT, it will link you to all of the different efforts that are going on. Each state is taking on their own Choose PT campaign and trying to work and discuss with physicians about getting PT referrals versus opioid prescriptions. So the APTA promotes evidence-based medicine. That's where the future of physical therapy is going at this point, evidence-based practice. So we do a lot of work in research, which is then published in the journals, looking at best practice and looking at career tools as to what can you do, how can you continue to advance your skill set. So these are all opportunities that are available within APTA. They have several different areas that you can go into and look up how to work towards that. So as far as APTA structure, for the PT members, they pay a higher membership rate than a PT does. What do they get for that higher rate? They have a full vote. They can serve on the board of directors, and they can serve as chapter presidents, vice presidents, and delegates. For PTAs, we pay a reduced rate for membership. Up until this past year, PTAs only had a half a vote. So the APTA, the PTA caucus, which Tiffany was a big part of here in North Carolina, we have had some goals and some initiatives to establish a full vote for the PTA. We got that passed last year that chapters can approve PTAs having a full vote. So this has been our first year since that was approved in the 2015 House of Delegates. Since that has happened, within a year, we have 27 chapters that have changed their bylaws and now allow PTAs a full vote. We have 7 sections that now have a full vote. That's been huge because that's something that PTAs fought for almost 20 years, was to establish a full vote. We have right now 12 chapters that have conferences coming up this fall that have the full vote bylaw on the floor. So we're anticipating that many more. And we are very hopeful that as this continues to progress, that PTAs get a full vote, it leads to more integration within other areas. So PTAs can serve on task forces within your chapter and within the National Association. You can serve as a PTA caucus rep for your state, which I highly encourage. We need more PTAs involved. And you can serve on any position within a committee or within your state board that just doesn't lead to presidency. So there are a lot of opportunities. There are director-at-large positions, there are committee chair positions. There's a lot of opportunity within your district and within your state chapter, leading to your national chapter, for PTAs to be involved and to be that voice. And there's been a huge collaboration with APTA recently that we are really trying to draw in the PTA and work more towards inclusion.
Crystal, you've served in all of those positions, haven't you?
Not all of them. So the APTA structure, the leadership of the APTA, you have the board of directors, which consists of 15 members. You have 6 officers and 9 directors, and they serve 3-year terms. And they have annual meetings. They have 4 face-to-face meetings and several conferences. And they basically run the APTA, but they are directed by the membership. It's a membership-driven association. So they essentially answer to the delegates from the House of Delegates because those are the leaders from within the chapters. So it is held annually each spring. I don't know why it's listed as spring, it's really summer because it's in June, but I guess technically because it's before the official date of summer. It's the highest policy-making body of the association. So it's comprised of your chapter voting delegates, which those are the only ones that have a vote at House of Delegates. So then you have your sections and your assemblies and the PTA caucus, who are all non-voting delegates and consultants on the floor of the House of Delegates. So one of the other initiatives that the sections and the PTA caucus have been working on is to have the sections and the PTA caucus have a vote on that floor of House of Delegates. We all have a voice, but we can't all vote on the issues. But that's where the connections come in, because you have to rely on your voting delegates, so you have to establish those connections. Now, each state, your number of delegates that you have on the floor of the House, which is your voting strength, is based on your state membership. Currently, North Carolina has 11 delegates on the floor of the House. So we actually have a moderate-sized chapter because there are some states that only have 2, but if you look at Florida, California, New York, which are larger states, they have 30. So if you have a couple of states that collaborate together that have those large number of voices, they can sway a decision one way or another. So, and that's another area that, you know, you have to look at is, okay, more membership, more strength in voting. We can be a stronger voice. So a little bit more on the leadership part of it. There are several volunteer groups that function year-round within the state association and the national association. So the national association, they're appointed by the board. There's a volunteer interest pool, which is you graduate, you can sign up, tell them where your special interests are, what some of your special skills are, how you feel you could help with any of these task forces. The board looks through these applications in this volunteer interest pool, and they select people to work on these task forces. Any member can serve, but you have to be a member. They look for diversity. Right now, I think they actually have a little bit more than 12 groups, but there are pretty much anywhere from 10 to 15 groups, task forces running at any given time, because there's always that much going on, different things that they're looking into, different ways to advance, different ways to progress. So there is also APTA staff. APTA office is in Alexandria, Virginia. They have 3 buildings right on the water. It's very pretty. They have 2 of them rented out. So they actually pay for their own office by renting the other offices, very frugal company, so that we can put our money back to our association. And it's mostly PTs that serve on the APTA staff. There are PTA members on staff, but they work for us and with us, for the association, for us as members. So your chapter setup is based on your geographical area. We have several districts across the state of North Carolina. Tiffany, what district are y'all here?
Tribe.
Tribe, that's what I was thinking.
We had a tribe district meeting here. One of the M months, either May or March. Which one was it, May?
May.
May 17th.
So this is where you really kind of build your roots. This is where you get the most benefit because you're right there in your area. You can reach out to people that live near you and you can make those connections. So you can work with your districts, get your foot in the door, get a role within the district, meet those contacts, and then you take that to your state meeting. Then from there, you start expanding, going into your national level. It's very important to get involved as far as continuing to advance yourself as a professional, but as well as to protect what you want to do for your future.
Can't complain about it. You're not going to do anything about it.
So, back to the House of Delegates. So this is the highest policy-making unit of the APTA. This is comprised of the voting delegates from each chapter. So basically what happens throughout the year is different chapters or sections will present what they call a motion, and it's something that they feel passionate about, that they want to present, and to set a standard and set a tone of practice for the profession. So then these motions are all brought forward, they're released in February, they're brought forward, they're discussed. So come June, when we have our meeting, we debate and discuss, they modify language, and it's a lot of educational component as to why this is important and how it's going to benefit or how it's going to progress the profession. And then the delegates from the chapters vote on whether to approve or deny the motion that's been presented. So some years there have been 50-plus motions. This year we had a slow year, we only had 19. Last year, we had, I think there were 30 motions for the 2015 House of Delegates. 3 of those motions were PTA related, for advancing the PTA within the profession. So, which is where the full vote motion came from. So it was presented to the House of Delegates, it was voted on, it passed, and that's from there, each chapter had been voting whether or not to change their bylaws. Now, once we get enough strength in the chapters that have already changed their bylaws, PTA caucus is looking at going back and making a motion and making it a mandate and making it a position that PTAs have a full vote within their chapter. So it will be an APTA position statement as well as the chapter has voted on it. So that's something the PTA caucus is looking at doing in the future. Out of the House of Delegates is also where the PTA was developed. PTs came in and said, we need somebody else, we need another provider. What is our best option? So they created the role of the PTA and the position of the PTA and set the standard and set the tone of who we are and what we do. Now at this point, they also limited use of Sharp's debridement, and they also limited use of modes, which mobilizations also varies based on your State Practice Act. Now, federations of state boards have also gone back in. There's been kind of an up and down when it comes to joint mobilizations. Back in the day when I was in school, we were taught joint modes in school, and it was on the state board. It was on the national board. Then it was not taught in schools and not on the boards. Now it's back on the board exams because the federation has gone around, they've done the research, they've looked, and they've said, okay, several states still have in their practice act that PTAs can perform mobilizations. PTAs need to be educated on how to perform them properly. It needs to be part of their components of schooling, and it needs to be on the licensure board. So it was changed 2 years ago that it's now back on the licensure board for joint mobilization. North Carolina is a state that I think most programs continue to teach joint mobilizations, even though it was kind of off the radar and it wasn't on the exam. But because it's something that PTAs can do in North Carolina, most educators felt that it was important to teach. And there are several continuing education courses that you can go to that teach mobilizations. We can't do mobilization of the spine, but we can do joint mobilizations of the extremities. So, why does all this matter? CMS and other insurance companies listen to what is said. They look for what the outcomes of our House of Delegates meetings are. So in September, usually the final minutes from the House of Delegates will be released. There are insurance companies that are waiting, that look for it every day, waiting for it to be released, to see what we have stated is best practice for our profession, to see what we've stated is our goal for our future. They base that on how they reimburse, what they view as physical therapy, what they view as a non-skilled service. So that's a huge factor. So in a national court of law, or in a court of law, the rules are going to be by your state license. So APTA sets all these standards, but it's your practice act that you follow. So if something were to ever happen, you're in court, or you're taking a court saying you're performing something you're not supposed to, it goes back to your state practice act. They'll look at APTA's position on it, but your guiding practice is your state practice act. So it kind of gives how they look at things, but the main thing you need to focus on is what's allowed in your state, and again, it varies from state to state. So now the PTA caucus, which is something I'm very passionate about, and Tiffany is as well. So the PTA caucus is made up of 55 members. You have one representative for each chapter, and you guys know your chapter rep very well. And Tiffany's been doing this is your 3rd year now?
Yes,
Yeah.
as caucus.
Yes, as the caucus rep. Running for re-election in October. So
Y'all don't have to vote or anything. Okay.
Well, unfortunately, y'all can't vote as
I know.
students, but, in another year, when you're out and you're members, and you want to be involved, You know, there's an alternate rep where you kind of go along next to your rep and you train and you learn about the role. Just hint, hint. Anybody? You know. And then there are 5 delegates, which are elected by the representatives at our national meeting. So every year in June, you have the House of Delegates. Well, 2 days prior to the start of the House of Delegates, the PTA caucus has their business meeting where we conduct our business, where we do our elections, where we discuss what we want to achieve as goals, what we want to work with APTA with to achieve as PTAs. And then we take that to the House of Delegates. We take that, each rep takes that back to their chapter to have discussions and deliberations throughout the week at House of Delegates at their chapter, and to have that support and collaboration between the 2 groups. So I'm one of those 5 PTA caucus delegates. I was elected 3 years ago to the APTA. So I sit on the floor of the House, and I can stand up and speak in favor or in opposition. And I've been working very closely with our chief delegate, who is rolling off in 2 years. So working towards becoming our chief delegate one day. See how that goes for me.
You will be able to vote then, guys.
Yes.
Remember, Crystal Morris, you're from Wilmington. Talk to y'all today.
So, but your PTA caucus rep is your voice to the chapter. That's who you need to contact if you have an issue, or if you see an issue in a clinical, if you see an issue as when you're out as a professional. They are the person that goes to bat for you, to bring to your association, to bring to an insurance company, to bring to an ethics board. That's your voice, is your PTA caucus rep. Now, you guys all have a voice too. You can go down the right channel, but your PTA caucus rep is going to be able to get there a little bit quicker because she's going to have the connections. The delegates are your voice on the floor of the House. Again, you can stand, speak in favor, opposition. We have 5 PTA voices out of 408 delegates on the floor of the House. So, like I said, North Carolina has 11 delegates as a whole. Some chapters have 30. The PTAs have 5. We have 5 voices, no vote, which is something that we're working to change in time. We're making small steps, which has been huge. We are active year-round. It's a full-time volunteer position because there's always something going, which we'll get into a little bit more of that as we go into the goals. So we have 5 committees that are working year-round, which technically, as of this year, we have done what we called sundowning the committees because we've worked in committees for several years and we established a lot in those 5 years, and we achieved the goals we wanted to achieve. Now, with the goals that we're working towards, they don't really fit into a specific committee. So we've sundowned those, but we've also established more integration within APTA, and we've got a PTA on every single one of these boards within APTA, whereas we didn't have that to start with. So APTA had kind of taken a look at what the PTA caucus was doing and realized that we were running side by side, and the PTA caucus was actually accomplishing more in some areas than the APTA was accomplishing with their committees. So over the last couple of years, we've done a lot more integration, and we've worked together with APTA, and we've integrated people into each of these committees through APTA. Plus, I have to say I'm passionate about the payment and practice, even though I didn't end up on that committee. So each delegate was assigned a committee to work with. I was the liaison for the Membership and Public Relations Committee, so which is obviously another area I'm passionate about because I'm here speaking to you guys about membership. But we also have continual task forces running within the PTA caucus, and these are going to run forever because they're always going to be important. There's always going to be value there. Nominating committee, who they seek out people who they feel are potential leaders, and they try and draw you in. We mentor you. We try and put you in a role that fits your personality. And the education committee, because we all know that education is continually changing. So we need people in there working and seeing what's going on, looking for the future, so that we can be on the right page. So, more on membership value. This has been kind of an ongoing discussion, moving the PTA degree to a bachelor's degree level. We all know it takes a long time to get a PTA degree, much more than what is truly an associate degree. There have been some different in-depth studies with APTA. There have been private studies. There are actually 2 programs who are accredited PTA programs to offer an associate's degree, but are now actually offering bachelor's degree programs. They are doing kind of a transitional, let's see what happens, we're moving forward with this. So the students will still be able to sit for the licensure exam because they're CAPTE accredited as an associate's degree program. They've met all those requirements, but those PTAs will graduate with a bachelor's degree as a PTA. So they're kind of setting the standard. They were tired of waiting for a PTA to make a decision. They moved forward with CAPTE. They worked together to establish what the program should look like. So they're kind of piloting how this will look. This is important to us as PTAs because we all know that the PT degree, the entry level, is a doctorate level. PTAs are an associate's degree level. Now, granted, we get everything we need in this associate's degree program, but there's a lot more that we could get to better prepare us for that entry level. And we've taken things out that are important to meet the needs of the program currently, which we can function that way, but it's not best practice either. So
But you guys can know that South is set up, that as soon as a bachelor's program is approved, your program will go to a bachelor's. You
Yeah.
guys will be grandfathered in.
yeah,
Don't freak
you
out.
guys say,
have
you guys are
associates.
fine,
You'll
you'll
be
graduate,
understanding.
you'll have your license by
Yeah.
the time this transitions, you won't have to go back for anything, you'll be grandfathered in, but this is the direction that it's taking for a PTA. And I think, me personally, I think this is important, I'm an advocate for it. Because I think it can make us better clinicians going in and better prepare us. And it also has impact with insurance companies.
Insurance company, too.
Because right now they look at, well, why am I paying the same rate for a service provided by a PTA with an associate's degree as I'm paying for a PT with a doctorate degree? They see this big gap in education. What they don't factor in is that, you know, the PT's 4-year degree could be on something completely unrelated. So when you look at the time spent in physical therapy school, there's not that big gap. And that we are qualified for the services that we provide equally to the PT. And that's the argument that APTA and PTA caucus present when they come to bat for the PTAs. So APTA Board of Directors and the PTA caucus need to hear from you guys. You guys are coming through this program now. You know how overwhelming it is, how much information you take in a short amount of time. So this is something that I think is very important for PTAs in the future. So, on to that payment component of things. There are 50-year insurance plans across the U.S. right now that do not pay for PTA services. Don't go to Kansas. Kansas is one of the worst ones. So if you're thinking about moving there, take it off the list. Because it is hard to find a job. So there are insurance companies that really don't understand what we do as assistants versus what a tech or an aide does. And there has been a current movement to reimburse less for the same therapeutic exercise charge as a PT. So why is this wrong? I kind of went into this on the last one, is that, you know, we are educated. We're trained. The services we provide under therapeutic exercise, therapeutic activities, neuro, we are equally trained in that as the PT. There is no reason to reduce the reimbursement amount for a PTA providing it versus a PT. This is actually the debate that got me into the PTA caucus rep role. So, and this was where Tiffany and I came in. We were sitting in the issues forum one night, and this was the discussion in the issues forum. And we're sitting at the table, and there was a PT that got up and spoke, and he was our reimbursement chair from North Carolina. And he got up and he stood that he supported this, reducing payment for a PTA service. And he explained it and he rationalized it as the same as an MD and a physician assistant, paying less. And we had a table of PTAs sitting over there, it was Tiffany, myself, and a couple others. And we were discussing, I'm like, you know, talk about all the reasons it's wrong. And at the time, Tiffany's role as director at large for PTAs, it wasn't necessarily appropriate for her to get up and stand up. She was like, well, one of us needs to speak. So I stood up and I debated back and forth with this PT over this topic as to why it wasn't appropriate. And we went into the education components. He came back to me a few months later, said he did some research, and he absolutely 100% agrees with me, and that he is now one of our biggest advocates for PTAs. And he went to bat with Blue Cross Blue Shield to fight this in North Carolina for reimbursement. He's also one of our delegates now on the House of Delegates, one of our voices. He has stood up and spoke for the last 4 years in favor of PTAs, in favor of PTA inclusion. He owns a practice in Cary with a partner. They have 3 clinics, and they hired PTs only for the first close to 10 years. They now have 2 PTAs on staff at their practice. This all comes from collaboration within the state and educating people, PTs especially, on who we are as PTAs. Be professional, get your voice out there. Tell them who we are, tell them what we do. And that's one of the big promotions that we've been trying to do through the APTA and through the NCPTA, because PTs aren't educated on who we are as PTAs, on what our role is and how to utilize us once we get into the clinic. So that's one of the goals of the PTA caucus, is to decrease that gap when you come out of school. We know what a PT is, we know what their role is, but they get a very brief description of who we are as PTAs and what we're actually capable of doing. So when you go into the clinic, you have to prove yourself in what you're capable of. We're trying to decrease that from happening. It's gonna happen, don't get me wrong, but we're trying to decrease the amount of it. So, there's my little spiel on that.
Chris?
So, yes?
Quick question.
Absolutely.
Your insurance company is the one that is really trying to go with that direction. You know, you have a list of which ones they are, or?
Workers' comp is one of the big ones.
Okay.
And then there is Blue Cross Blue Shield in a couple of states. And
North Carolina's not one of those?
no, North Carolina is not one of them. We were able to avoid that here. And all of our workers' comp companies reimburse for PTA services. We can treat all workers' comp, and we get reimbursed at a full rate for workers' comp. So North Carolina is a very PTA-friendly state. We are very well supported, and we don't have any issues with any insurance companies. Now, there is an insurance company issue, and it's a national issue, and that is TRICARE. And I don't know if Tiffany has explained this to you or not. So TRICARE, which is your military insurance. PTAs in an outpatient private practice setting do not get reimbursed for treating TRICARE. PTAs can treat TRICARE in any other setting, home health, skilled nursing, hospital-based outpatient. They can treat on the military sites. In fact, PTAs that work for the government, that work on the military bases, actually perform like ankle and shoulder evaluations. They have their own set of guidelines that they follow on the government entities, because they're not bound by your State Practice Act. They're bound by their rules and regulations, which as a PTA, I have issues with that. So I couldn't work out there. But TRICARE is one of the issues for PTA payment. So if you're working in a military town, an outpatient private practice setting is limited opportunity. They've got to have a high rate of other insurance companies for them to be able to bring a PTA on. But military towns predominantly see a lot of TRICARE patients. So you don't see a lot of PTAs in outpatient private practice. You see them in hospital-based. Now, there is a huge initiative with APTA. We are making progress on it. And TRICARE will tell you, well, this was written back in the day before PTAs were licensed, and da-da-da-da-da. And it's really just a gray area of wording. But that gray area of wording needs to be changed. To date, in my 14 years, I've only heard one time of somebody coming back, like TRICARE denying something that was provided by a PTA in outpatient, and only one time that they requested reimbursement for it. And I think it was basically somebody came up and said, well, this is wrong, and it was kind of a force your hand thing. It wasn't. So it was something somebody brought up, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. Had it not been brought to them, I don't think it would have been an issue. I mean, to be quite honest, until it started becoming like a big push within APTA to get the wording changed, I had been treating TRICARE in outpatient private practice for 7 years. The thing about it is, for PTAs, our charges are billed out under the PT's provider number. So we're doing the treatment, PTA cosigns our note, and it's billed out through the PT. So that's what TRICARE looks at when they reimburse. That's what Medicare looks at when they reimburse. It's all based off the PT's number. So, you know, we didn't know it was such a huge issue. I treated TRICARE for years, and it was never an issue. They never came back and denied any services. They never came back and said, you can't treat this person. I mean, there were patients that I treated throughout their entire caseload, follow-up visits as needed by the PT, but it was never an issue. But it's something that most practices have gone to now. Okay, we don't get reimbursed for this. Instead of, you know, fraudulent practice, we'll just go along with guidelines until it gets changed. So it's definitely something that's being worked on. So some of the big things that we've done with the APTA and the Payment and Policy Committee is we've got a couple of PTAs that are on the APTA Payment Policy and the Advocacy Committees working together to combat these issues as they arise, prevent them from happening. So about 3 years ago, Walmart was redoing their policy and how they had set up for payment, what they would reimburse services for. Walmart's a huge employer. They originally had it written in their contract that they would not pay for services, physical therapy services provided by a PTA. Now, one of our now delegates had heard of this. He was up in Indiana and heard that it was going on. He went and met with the PTA Payment Policy Committee. They went to the Walmart headquarters and met with Walmart and discussed. We have a toolkit, a PTA toolkit, a PTA toolkit, and a PTA toolkit, all available through the APTA website as to who a PTA or who PTAs are, what services we provide, what our licensure is. And they went and had this discussion with Walmart, presented everything to them. Walmart then changed the way their contract was written so that PTAs get reimbursed full value for services provided. So that was a major, major win a couple years ago. We went through the same thing with Lowe's as they were rewriting insurance contracts. It was being written into the contract. PTAs would not be reimbursed for services or be able to provide services. So we contacted APTA, again, had the meeting. So they never actually went into place that PTAs couldn't provide services. So we were able to combat this before it became an issue, which is much easier to combat than after it's an issue. So these are things that APTA is looking out for, but these are also things that the PTA caucus, the payment and policy advocates, are keeping up with on a regular basis.
Walmart and Lowe's, they workers' comp thing, is that what you're referring
No.
to here? Is this something else?
Yes,
Okay.
for their policies that they provided for their staff. And they were going through with Blue Cross or Cigna, whoever was providing their services, and establishing their contract for insurance.
I got it.
So that would have been huge. Workers' comp is one thing. Most companies don't have their own workers' comp division. They have different networks for workers' compensation, and they fall under those categories. And each you have like 3 or 4 major workers' comp companies, then you have smaller private companies. But then they also have contracts written differently for different regions. And so this was huge because Walmart and Lowe's are very large employers. To think of how many employees would be utilizing their insurance and not be able to get treated by a PTA because of the way it was written. So kind of develop the toolkit should have been up a little bit higher in talking to insurance companies. So that's something that the PTA caucus does. That's something that APTA does. We meet with insurance companies on a regular basis when we hear about potential reduction in reimbursement or lack of reimbursement. So this kind of comes to what's the value, what do I get for my money that I contribute? This is part of it. This is what people don't see and what they don't understand, is that this is going on year round. And this is how we're protecting our profession, how we will continue to have a job, is because of the work going on between the APTA, the payment policy, and the advocacy committees, and the PTA caucus, PTAs that are a part of it, and being that voice for all of us. So, this is kind of what APTA and what has the PTA caucus done for PTAs as a whole. Years ago, and these were the 6 goals that were established when I started becoming involved with the PTA caucus, which has been 7 years ago now. And these were to move the PTA forward. At this point, when we met in June, we determined that all 6 of these goals have been met. Come to find out, these have been goals of the PTA caucus for almost 20 years. And they had been meeting such resistance that they'd had no success getting these goals established. In the past 7 years that I've been involved, I've seen continued progress, and I've seen continued collaboration and greater inclusion within APTA. That's been one of the factors in PTAs not wanting to be a member, is they feel like they weren't included, they weren't valued. And I can honestly say, when I went in 7 years ago, I can see a huge difference to now. PTAs are much more respected, they are valued, they want your input, they want you to be their partner. Because we're partners in the clinic, why can't we be partners professionally, doing what's best for our association as well? So, expansion of the PTA education at entry level. You guys are just now in your program, but they've started including more things in the programs, which means we've had to take away other things to expand on that. But that's also where we're looking at advancing to the bachelor's degree. And we've got a couple pilot programs. A lot of programs have already established how they would, most PTA programs are in community colleges. So how would they offer a bachelor's degree as an option? They have already started making contacts with local universities to offer the first 2 years of it at a community college level, finish the last 2 years at the university level. That way it's still financially feasible for PTAs, because that's a big factor for a lot of people in choosing to be a PTA is a 2-year associate's degree is a lot more financially feasible than to take on a doctorate degree, especially for people that choose it as a second career, which is a lot of cases for PTAs. It is definitely a second career option for a lot of people out there. Looking at the expansion of the PTA post-entry level, we focus on specialization. So I was explaining to you that the APTA has what they call an advanced proficiency, which is a 5-year track. Well, they have recently changed how they do that. Before it was you kind of pick what area you want to go to, which you still do that, but you chose your classes and you set up your coursework independently and then just applied and hoped that you met the requirements that they were looking for. Now, they have what they call advanced proficiency pathways. It's a 5-year track set up by APTA with the sections, and the sections have collaborated and said, these are the qualities and standards that we feel make a PTA advanced in our section. So there are several sections that have collaborated, and they have coursework outlined that you'll achieve during that track. So it's kind of a designed specialty in that area. You have a mentor within your practice where you're working, and you have a mentor within APTA. They keep up with you and tell you, okay, we're here, we need to look at doing this, we need to look at doing this, and it helps you to grow and you establish more connections because you've got your mentor at APTA. They take you down a track that's going to benefit you in a career choice that you want to go down. We have established active participation on all levels of governance. We've got PTAs in every task force. We have a PTA sitting at the table at the board of directors. We have a voice in every aspect. Now, we need PTAs to fill some of those roles because we still have some empty seats. But we actually have the opportunity now, which we didn't have years ago. Promotion and protection of payment for PTA services. I've talked a lot about that already. We've established that. We've got an active committee that works on that regularly. Expansion of the scope of work. Looking at what PTAs can do. Well, we can't do evaluations, but we can do components of, and we can do that and get that to the PT. We don't necessarily do that on the first visit, but there are some clinics that do. The PTA may bring the patient back and ask a couple things, do a couple test measures, or the PT may start the eval, do a couple things. PTA may finish tests and measures and report it to the PT. The PT finishes their evaluation based on how a clinic is set up. And that's within the scope because there are tests and measures that we are qualified to do. There's no reason we can't. Or the PT may do most of the eval. They may have the PTA do a Berg or a Tonetti at the completion. What that's also doing is establishing the team connection of the PT-PTA team that's going to follow that patient through. You're meeting that patient on the evaluation day by doing that method. There are some clinics out there that do that. There are some that, they introduce the PTA at that first visit and then establish the team in that route, which is the more prominent setup. But also the protection of the PT-PTA team. We have worked very hard within membership and PR with APTA to protect who we are as a PTA team and not allow additional providers. We are recognized as licensed professionals by the insurance companies. Letting somebody else in and having them as part of the team only decreases our value to these providers, which we're already fighting for payment from. So we've done a great job of maintaining that. So it took a while to get there, but in the last 7 years, we have achieved all 6 of these goals that the PTA caucus had set up, which meant that this year during our PTA business meeting, we had to establish additional goals to work on. We had to determine what was important and where we need to be and what we need to focus on for the next few years. And hopefully it won't take us long to achieve them. So these are the goals that we've established for the PTA caucus for the coming years. And we are actually just starting the groundwork of getting groups together. And what we did is we had these goals and strategies set up. Each of the 5 delegates was assigned a strategy to work with an established team. We sent out a survey to all the PTA caucus reps. They chose what they were most passionate about, because that's one of the things you want to do when you're working on something. You're going to find more value in it if it's something you're passionate about. We can assign you a task, but if it really doesn't impact you, or you don't have anything that you feel you can offer to it, how much effort are you going to put into achieving it? So we want everybody to find their passion and work in that area. So these are our new goals that we are just starting to assign and get our groundwork laid and get working on. PTA caucus reps are informed and engaged leaders. So obviously they're already in a leadership role. We need to advance that. So first strategy to achieve that is the PTA reps and members will be active, engaged, and prominent at your district, chapter, and section levels and within the caucus year-round. Number 2 is to develop tools for the PTA caucus reps to nurture PTA leaders and mentor successors. So Tiffany's teaching you guys right now. She's your PTA caucus rep. She's looking at you guys as students. I think they're one that has a passion. I think they're one. And you mentor. You draw them in. You bring them in and say, come with me to this. Let's do this. Start helping you grow and putting you into a leadership position. And we do that when we're at the district meetings. We're in a class with somebody at a Con Ed course. We find somebody, I think you might be interested in this, and you bring them in. So you're always being watched because everybody has potential, and we need to find where your passion is and draw you to it. This is something more pertaining to the PTA caucus as a whole. Refining our internal structure to promote better communication and accountability. Finding a method that works for everybody, because one method works for one, it doesn't necessarily work for the other, so we need to find a way to reach everybody. Our goal, second goal, is we need to continue to promote the benefits of the PTA team, and that they are understood, that they're understood and promoted. So, strategy 1, communicate the benefits of the PTA team to students, educators, clinicians, and payers. So we have PTAs that go around and present at schools. We have PTs that go around. We have PTA teams that go around and do presentations together. We present at PT and PTA programs. We present at hospitals. We present at different clinics, not just on membership value, but on the PTA team as a whole. Identify and cultivate PTA innovators who participate and or lead research promoting evidence-based outcomes. That's the direction that everything is going with PT, is that evidence-based. But there are a lot of PTAs that are more than just clinicians. They like research. They like innovations on new trends. So we need to find those people, and we need to get them in the right place. We need to utilize our contacts within the APTA and help them grow to be that innovator and that leader. Because it's not exclusive to PTs. PTAs can step up, and PTAs can have that role as well. So we need to be able to find those people and put them in the right place. This is our longest one. PTA caucus will collaborate with APTA to enhance efforts to increase membership value for PTAs. We want PTAs to be a member. We want to increase that number from 7%. We want to be above 10% within the next 3 years, which isn't a huge goal. 3% isn't a lot. I think it's attainable. But we need PTAs to understand why it's important, why there's value. So we're collaborating with components in the national PTA membership recruitment efforts. We work very closely with the PR and membership committee within APTA. Again, we have somebody on that task force within APTA. Each PTA caucus representative will initiate an individual plan of action to directly affect membership within their section or chapter. So sections are the specialty sections. That's your area of passion. So say you want to be in acute care, and that's where you really want to be. There's an acute care section, and they can help you with courses, contacts, and there's sections for aquatics, pediatrics, orthopedics, private practice, health policy. I mean, there's a section for everything. It's where your passion is, and you can get the most resources specific to your passion by being a part of that section. And then your chapter level, which is your state. So we also want to foster PTA involvement with the chapters, sections, and the national efforts to enhance payment and support the PTA team. I've already spoken a lot about that. I don't need to go into any further detail. We want to promote the physical therapist assistant educational opportunities that prepare for contemporary practice. This goes back to that evidence-based research, the innovation. We want you to come out of school understanding this. This also incorporates in new payment models that are coming out. So you guys will be better prepared for it than a PTA that's been practicing 5 or 10 years, because you've got the latest information as a student. So we have to figure out how we're going to teach us older people that. PTA Caucus is actually starting a quarterly webcast, and it's going to be for PTA Caucus reps and any PTA members. We had our first webcast in June. We've got another one scheduled for October. The first one we had in June was on the advanced proficiency pathway that I talked to you about. Derek Strepp, who's in charge of that through APTA, did a 30-minute webcast explaining the process of application, explaining how it works, and it is available on the website for members to view. And any webcast that's done, if you can't listen to them when they're live, they are archived on the website. You can go back and listen to them at any time. But if you're listening when they're live, you can also type in and ask questions and have your questions answered on the spot. So. There are options. Have a career plan. Don't let it be just a job. I've spoken a few times, find your passion, find where you want to be, and focus your energies there. There are so many opportunities in the physical therapy profession, so many different settings, and you guys are learning that now, that find an area that really appeals to you and excel, because that's going to be your best track. And everybody has something that's a little bit different. You have a skill set that you could offer to one group that somebody else may not have. So that's why I say find your passion. And it's still early, so it takes a little bit of time. Find certifications, continuing education courses that allow PTAs to be certified. There are several out there. And then challenge other PTAs you know to step up. Don't be satisfied with being just a PTA. Never be satisfied with just having the basic entry level. Always advance yourself.
So, guys, tell Crystal what I'm here to make you guys.
Can we say it?
Huh? Say it, Crystal.
Damn good PTA.
There you go. So, strive towards achieving that advanced proficiency pathway with APTA. It helps you as a clinician because it gives you better tools. It makes you more marketable as a PTA. It's going to give you an edge over another applicant for a position. Tiffany can attest to that. I can attest to that. You know, everybody in here graduates with the same licensure. What you do above and beyond sets your resume out from the next person. It's going to make you more marketable. It's going to make you the one they contact. It's also going to impact what you get paid. I can tell you right now, having advanced proficiency and doing above and beyond gets you a little bit higher salary. So there's benefits because it makes you a better clinician, but it also helps benefit you financially for your career. Just wanted to throw that out there because that's important to all of us. I mean, we got to live. Advanced proficiency is the only APTA recognized certification that we can get. There are several other certifications out there for PTAs, but this is the only one that APTA recognizes at this point. It's not always going to be that way. And you have to have CEUs anyway. You have to have them to renew your license all the time. So why not do something that's going to better you as a clinician, going to better you as for a career field? Increase your education. Always, always continue to strive for more. Never be satisfied with the basics, the entry level. And I said this earlier, entry level for PT is a DPT. So we have to bring a greater skill set to the table. We have to show them why we're equal. Because yes, a PTA is here, or PT is here, they can do evaluations, they can do this. That doesn't make them better than us. We can be as good of a clinician as a PT. Our educational degree doesn't matter when we're in the clinic providing that service to that PT or that patient who's already been evaluated. You are their provider that day, not the PT. So always remember that. So there are many options for you as you venture into this new career field. So become involved in the APTA. It offers you so many benefits and so many connections I just can't stress that enough. There are young professionals areas, so you can come and grow and learn from others. I went to National Student Conclave as a student, and I think that was probably one of the most enlightening experiences for me as a student that I could have ever achieved. You're there with students from all across the U.S., and you're interacting with people in different programs. It was very interesting to me to learn the differences of what's taught in different programs and to have those connections and collaborations and to hear that. Now, I also got the opportunity to participate in a quiz bowl when I was at Student Conclave. And there was me and another PTA student from my program. You met Tam this summer. We participated in the quiz bowl, and it's PTs and PTAs, much like the quiz bowl that we'll have in October at our fall conference. I hear some of y'all are going to be going. Might have a team together. But Tam and I placed in the top 5 in this quiz bowl of, I think there were 30 or 40 different schools, PT and PTA schools. So we felt very proud of our education as PTAs, that we competed at the same level as PTs. So that just goes to show you that what you're being taught in here is not PTA specific, it's therapy specific. And always remember that.
Well, do you remember PTAs were not allowed to do quiz bowl for 2 or 3 years? Do you remember the reason why?
No.
Because PTA schools won it 4 years in a row.
I
Won the
did
quiz
not.
bowl.
So
they did not allow PTAs for a while.
So keep that in mind. Your education is for therapy, it's not for PTAs. We teach you the difference of the PT and the PTA, but your education is not. You're learning the same things the PT is learning in their program. So join your district committee, go to your district meetings. There are roles that right now as a student that you can serve on within your district, and you can make those connections so that you can continue to grow there. We have a national PT pub night. They host them at every conference, and different states and chapters are now establishing pub nights. So if you guys haven't had a pub night here, if your school allows you, some schools are restricted on this, establish a pub night. Find a local pub, advertise it to other programs. Advertise it. Tiffany can get you the connections to advertise within your district. It's a great networking opportunity, and everybody loves to go out and have a drink. Big thing, you have to be the best at what you do, but then you have to do more to prove it. And that's going to be throughout your career, because there will be patients that ask, and you guys probably ask the same question to people you meet. Why are you just a PTA? Or why didn't you become a PT? That's probably going to be the most famous question you will ever be asked throughout your career. And there's nothing wrong with being a PTA. It's the best career path I could have chosen. I am proud to be a PTA. And I'll make jokes sometimes, I'm just a PTA, and I'll have people look at me and say, really? Just a PTA? It's a licensure degree, and it's a choice of why you do it. But I chose it because I knew that I wanted to work in physical therapy, and I knew that going to, at that point it was transitioning to a master's program, I knew that that wasn't an option for me. I was a single mom of a small child, and I still wanted to be a professional, and I knew I wanted to be in physical therapy. So I looked at my options. I said, this is a great option. This is what I want to do. And never in my years have I questioned my decision to become a PTA, because I've always been proud of who I am and what I do, and I have less responsibility than the PT. Not that I don't mind the responsibility, I've taken it on in other areas, but basically I have less paperwork to do. And it doesn't come back to me if something is wrong in the eval. Now, there will be times that you have to call out a PT, say, what were you looking at here? Is this goal really appropriate for this patient? And never be afraid to question that. Never be afraid to talk to and collaborate with your PT and ask them those questions. Because as a team member, that's your responsibility. You have to, just because they've done the evaluation, set the plan of care, you are still responsible. You are still a licensed provider. Never do something that you don't feel comfortable with. Never do something that you feel is questionable, whether it's in their plan of care or not. If you don't feel it's appropriate for that patient, you can talk to that PT, say, you know what, this is what I'm seeing, this is where I'm at with this. I don't think this is the right track. Have that discussion. That's who you are as a professional. You have that autonomy as well. So just always remember those things. So I have some websites here that are great resources. There are, on the APTA website, there are specific pages that relate to PTAs, that have PTA resources. Several of the things I mentioned, like the toolkit and things like that, everything is on APTA's website. So there are some supervision and teamwork videos that discuss PT-PTA collaboration within the clinics and how different clinics operate. Because every PT-PTA team is going to operate a little bit differently. Different clinics have different setups. So there are some websites that offer that information. And that is my email address. If you guys have any questions, obviously Tiffany knows how to reach me, but I am always available to anybody. You can email me, and I usually respond back within about 24 hours because I do work as well. So, do you guys have any questions currently for me? Go ahead.
Because of the advocates against bachelor's degree, can you elaborate on some of the arguments against it? I know you stand for it, but just hearing the other viewpoints.
So, one of the biggest arguments against it has actually come from educators. And
Educators that are not in universities.
yes, that's like,
Okay.
I was getting ready to clarify.
Yeah.
So there are concerns from several educators who are at community colleges about taking the PTA degree away from a community college. There are a couple reasons for that. Some of them I completely understand, they're completely validated. Some of them it's more so just because they're afraid of losing their job. But they're afraid because the PTA degree being an associate's degree being in a community college makes it a very financially feasible degree to achieve. And it is, of associate's degrees and professions, it's actually one of the higher paying associate degree professions that you can go into for a very cost efficient program. They are afraid of losing potential PTAs that could be great PTAs because they can't afford to go the 4-year route. So I completely understand that issue and that fight. But like I said, there's work within community colleges currently to collaborate with and establish relationships with universities to still offer the first 2 years in a community college and then transition to the university. And the other fight is that, is it really necessary? Which is what the in-depth looks have been looking at, is what is currently being offered in a PTA program and what is needed in a PTA program. Do we truly need to expand on that? So they're looking at the different educational components, looking at whether offering that is going to make us any better of a PT or a PTA if we go to a bachelor's degree. So those are the two major things that they're looking at. Most people are actually in favor of it. We haven't gotten a lot of opposition to it. Most PTAs are in favor of it because they've been through the program. And by the time you take 3 years to get a 2-year degree, you're like, what would another couple semesters be? You know, I don't know how y'all's program has been so far, you know, if you had kind of a year of prerequisites getting into the program, but that's the way I'd say probably 90% of PTA programs across the state are, or across the nation, in fact. I mean, my PTA program when I graduated was 74 credits for a PTA degree.
What states do not have PTAs? What, you don't have a licensure for PTA?
So all 50 states now have certification or licensure.
Okay.
So Hawaii is a certification state, not a licensure state.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So everybody has to sit for the national licensure exam, regardless of what state you work in. Hawaii was the last state to achieve certification for it. And I'm not sure why they offer it as certification versus licensure. I still need a little bit of clarity on that because it's something that's newly transitioning. Because back when I was in school, I think there were 11 states that you didn't have to have a license. You graduated and your graduation, your completion of the program, you could go practice. You didn't have to sit for the national licensure exam, which became another issue with insurance reimbursement because they're like, well, you're not licensed, you just went to school. So transitioning and getting it established in all 50 states that we have some kind of licensure or certification has really made us a more solid foundation for that to speak with insurance companies as well. Washington State was one of the other ones who recently got the licensure exam, I think. Michigan, there were a couple that have just gotten it within, I mean, Hawaii's just been within the last 2 years now, so. Any other questions?
Yes. How long after you graduated did you try to do your advanced proficiency?
For me personally, I've probably been out about 6 or 7 years. I know PTAs that as soon as they are graduating, they're starting the application process. Because now, the way it's set up, when I did it, it was you had to at least have 5 years experience because you had to show 5 years of continuing education coursework. Now, the way it's set up is the pathway, you can apply when you graduate and you can get on that track, and they will give you the guidelines to achieve it, which I think is a little bit better program because now it is something that you can work towards as a new graduate, and it helps give you that guidance, because that's when we need it the most, to be quite honest, because we don't have the experience. So having that mentor and having a path set out for us to follow to achieve that advancement, I think is a great opportunity. Any other questions? Tiffany, anything else you want me to?
No, advanced proficiency is, I wouldn't say a must, but it's a great thing.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to be in leadership. It allows you a little bit extra money. And it's great on your resume, so you might get that position over someone that hasn't done it.
Yep.
You know, as far as being a clinician, you gotta be a great clinician first before you can do all this. But this crystal up here is last year's PTA of the year, and another year you had it.
Mm-hmm.
You had it. Was it the year after?
I think I had it the year
Before.
after you. Yeah, the year after you had it, and then
then
last year.
again last year. We ran against each other. She won.
Yeah, and I think
You
the
have
only
to be
reason,
nominated.
I think the only reason that happened is just because last year was a big year for
Yeah.
PTAs, and I did a lot of work within North Carolina to really promote the PTA full vote and getting that established.
No, it was well deserved.
So,
Well deserved, so.
yeah.
I even voted for you, so.
Yeah.
I didn't vote for myself.
So I think I spent, I took 4 days off of work and I drove across North Carolina presenting at different PT and PTA programs and going to different district meetings, trying to promote the PTA goals and to set us up for success in getting the PTA full vote in North Carolina. Like I say, I'm very passionate about promoting the PTA and being a part of the association, and I often just take time and go speak wherever I can to try and draw people in. And that's why I say I'm always available if you have any questions, anything you need.
No questions, nothing else? All right. Make sure you fill out your evaluation, turn it over, put it on the desk in front of me. I need to make sure there's 13 there. You guys have a break until 10:30.